Hello there, I'm Jack, and today's topic is talking with our hearts. And it seems like a weird concept that's also pretty at the same time. We like thinking of it that way. Yes, it's beautiful to talk with our hearts, and we want to go toward that movement. But the question is, how do we do that? How do we actually talk with our hearts? As far-fetched as it may sound, because my heart can't say anything. But really, it just comes down to perception. It's just a perception that my heart can't say anything. And so we put weight on forms of communication. So we say we can only communicate in these ways and not those ways. And so if we put weight on verbal communication, talking with our mouths, then of course it may seem hard to talk with our hearts. So what I want to bring about is the difference between the two, talking with our mouths and with our hearts, because they come from two different places. They're both energy, they're just different forms of energy. So first, talking with our brains. In that form of energy, we have a lot of words that we can remember. And so with those words, we remember those words, and then we move our mouths to push air through space. So that's pressure waves, sound waves. So that's a form of energy. That's a frequency. That's why sounds can hurt feelings, because sounds do mean something. They come from a source. But when we talk from our brains, we may say something. So there's a duality between heart and brain. I feel like it can be a duality if we choose to make it that way. How about that? That sounds a little bit more in alignment. But we can cause a duality. We can cause dissonance between the two, because our brains will say something with our mouths and our hearts will feel something else with our aura. So really that's where the dissonance comes in. My heart is so much more powerful than my brain. 5,000 times more electromagnetic than my brain. So a lot of people want to put a lot of emphasis on what the brain does, and we say consciousness is in the brain. And when we say expand consciousness, people will even expand their head when they say, I'm trying to expand consciousness. You notice they'll still put their hands around their head. So there's that feeling like they're trying to look for consciousness, or a big type of consciousness in their head. But that's really intellectual consciousness. That's remembering a lot of words from a lot of books that they read and all that. So that's a form of consciousness. That's why people who study all the time remember tons of words. But it's hard to really feel, I guess, in our hearts, let's say even live it, like have that willpower. So those are two different things, intellectual power and willpower. They can be two different things, but when put together, it's really powerful. Anyway, so the heart is much more powerful in the sense of the brain. So for example, just look at a car crash. So if someone were taking a test on a car crash, and the question was, what led to, or what could they have done in order to prevent the crash? Sit there, they'll think about it for a few minutes, write down an answer or two or something like that. But when we're in the car driving and we're sliding on the road or getting into the accident, we do not take a few minutes to think about it, and if we do, we're done. That's where our heart comes in. It's almost automatic. It's because our hearts can process so much more in a given moment. And athletes, they talk about getting in the flow. So in that flow, they say, don't think. Because once we think, we get out of it. And it's so true, I do it. I mean, I know exactly what they're talking about. So every time I think about it, right before I'm about to do it, it always turns out sloppy, or not the way that I guess it normally would. So basically, when I'm in that flow, I'm just feeling each shot, whatever practice I'm doing. So I'm just feeling it as it's coming and going in the direction. But it's hard to get in that, because we do have to shut off our thoughts in a way. So just to show the dynamics between the two and how powerful our heart essence can be and how weak our brain essence can be, I'm going to eat healthy for this week. Oh, that's a great idea. And then what do you know, we actually eat junk food all week. So what's the difference between our brains and our hearts? Our brains can say many things, and our hearts can feel, whatever it's going to feel. So with that, seeing the difference between the two, now we can start understanding how to talk, because when we talk with people, we're constantly talking with our hearts. So my friend, he said we're all naked. And I really enjoy this, because what I feel like he's saying is that we're always telling each other our intentions energetically. So we're all naked, so everyone knows everyone's intention. But we can hide it with other things, like let's say our words. So my intention and my feeling about this. Let's say my partner asks me, do I look fat in this dress? And of course, most of us would say, you gotta lie. You gotta say she looks fine. She looks perfect the way she is, and she's not fat. But here's the thing, if I feel like she is overweight and I say that she's not, she will question that, she will feel that, and she will realize the dissonance between the two. So, we have that, I feel a certain way about something, yet I say another thing. And so it really causes the other person to feel a certain way, and it's a weird signature, energetic signature, vibration. And just picture how often we do this. Just ask yourself, how often throughout the day do I feel a certain way about something, yet say something different, or not quite what I felt? Yes, it may be in consideration of other people's feelings. That's great. So now that's a whole side tangent I don't really want to get on at the moment, but back to the difference between our hearts and our brains. So our hearts will feel, it's so hard for us to lie with our hearts. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. It's, like I said, it's much more powerful, much more in tune, intuitive. So when we have a feeling about something, yet we say something different, it doesn't quite match up. But if we want to learn how to talk with our hearts, first we have to realize that difference between the two. So how often am I feeling a certain way, yet saying something different? And so once I start aligning the two together, once I start saying what I'm feeling, there's that alignment coming in, and there isn't a dissonance causing a weird vibration between the two. So once I start doing that, and that's transparency, once I start being more transparent and coming from my heart, speaking from my heart, aligning my heart with my brain, that is when I start realizing what my intentions are, what my feelings are, what my heart is. And so those are all feelings, because as I'm talking, I am feeling a certain way about it. And so when I get those feelings as I'm talking, I start connecting the two. And so that's how I start learning the language of speaking with the heart, just as babies. You know, mom points over there and says toilet, and then she sits on the toilet and shows the baby, and the baby starts making associations. Because and that's all I'm doing. I'm making associations. So since I stopped trying to do the white lies and beat around the bush, I don't do it nearly as much, but now that I start aligning myself that way, I'm starting to make those associations. And so as I have those feelings, as I'm speaking honest opinions and feelings, I can now write them down in a book. And so when I write them down in my internal book, I can pull them out when I want, just as a baby will. A baby will eventually start saying mama, dad, dad, because they know that word means that person, genuinely. So it's the same deal with speaking with our hearts. I mean, that's the way I'm doing it at this moment. So other people can do it differently. I don't know how, but this is how I explain it to people, and this is what I've been doing. So all I have to do is first stop lying to myself and others, and then start matching my actual feelings with the words I'm saying, and then make a log of that. And so then once I have that log, I can now bring it back when I want. And so I can actually, instead of being bound by the feeling and not being able to, let's say I can only speak a certain or a few words or something like that. If I keep more of a log, I can now bring out feelings rather than just take in feelings that other people are projecting onto me. So if someone's saying something, I'm only bound by this one feeling that's coming up, and that's getting pulled into that vortex and that charge. But if I have all these other words and feelings, words being feelings, to call on, I can now speak. I have a much larger vocabulary, I guess you could say. So if we understand that can be very powerful. And to show you, or to explain to you how far this can go, which it goes way further than what I can do, I guarantee you that. But when I started doing this, with people, and so as I'm projecting my feeling or speaking my feeling, and we're talking, they will actually feel it, and the conversation will shift in that way. And they start speaking, almost as if they heard me. And so I can do this with people, not all the time. I mean, it's hard. Communication doesn't always match up, but yeah, I see that correlation. And I've also been able to do this with animals. So I was walking down a sidewalk next to a pond, and there were a bunch of geese, and they were cleaning up. They were scratching themselves, washing themselves. Some were taking a nap, and I was just walking by, and they just started yap 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 yap, and I just looked at them like, are you serious? I'm not gonna do anything. But then immediately I realized I did something wrong. And I immediately went into my feelings, and the first thing that came up was, I'm entitled to walk down this sidewalk. This is a human sidewalk. I deserve to walk down this sidewalk. And then I realized, wow, they do not know that at all. They have no real clue that humans built that. I mean, they might have some clue, but they don't see it that way. They're not like, oh, a human built that. We gotta let humans be able to walk on that piece of rock that's right next to our pond that we go to every single day and is our spot right now. And so once I realized that, I said, from my heart, I stopped, put my hand up, tried to project the energy out through my hand, and then I said, I'm sorry. I'm sorry that I did that. I took this for granted. and this is your space. I gave them that respect. Immediately, they all stopped yelling at me. Some of them went back to sleep. I'm talking like 30 of them. And some of them went back to sleep. Some of them just stared at me. And I was still just standing there. I wasn't walking. And others just walked right back, moseyed on. They weren't all facing me and yapping at me. They all went back to what they were doing before because I gave them that respect from my heart. I talked to them from my heart. And then after a couple minutes of that, I just started walking again, and even as I was still walking by them, they didn't yell at me. And so that's when it really clicked. I also did it with insects. I did it with flies, and we had a bunch of flies in our house, and so my roommates were just killing them all. 20, 30 of them at a time. And so one day I was just like, I don't want to kill them anymore. Actually, I didn't kill any of them, but I didn't want them to die anymore. So what I did was I opened a window and I started asking them to come on my hands so I can just put them outside. Just fly on me and I'll take you out. And I put my hands up and I focused on a couple of them and they landed right on my hands. And then I slowly went out. Normally when something moves they fly off. They stayed on my hands all the way out the window. I did that with like 3 or 4 flies. And then it got to a point where I was talking to them with my hands in the air, and 2 of them flew out side by side. And that just floored me again. So yeah, it's just that feeling. I had to genuinely talk to them with my feelings. But here's the thing. It won't necessarily work unless we understand they have the same sort of core essence and energy about them. So if we don't see them as having feelings, if we don't see animals, plants, insects, humans, even humans, yeah, some people feel like other humans don't deserve feelings. So basically, if we say they don't have feelings, we cut it off. We cut off that communication, and that's where we just don't know how to speak it. That's where we don't know how to connect with them, with our feelings, because we sever that relationship and we say, no, fly doesn't understand anything I'm going to say. Kill it. Just take it out because it can't hear my words. But that's because that's our ignorance saying I only know how to talk with my mouth, and flies don't. They don't talk like that. Even animals that do have mouths, like dogs, they can barely talk. We're just now inching our way into that realm of, wow, dogs can communicate, even verbally in some ways. But I've been able to heart communicate with puppies. So my sister had four little like mixed bulldogs. Maybe with some pit bull in them. But yeah, I was sleeping over at her house, and they were getting up in the middle of the night and just going meow, meow, doing the whole whine thing. And so I was sleeping, and I basically talked to him. I said it was okay. You don't have to worry. You're worried about something, and you have, if it's going out or going to the bathroom. So I had to feel what it felt like to go to the bathroom, want to go to the bathroom. And so I pulled out that feeling, and I said, and I pulled out a relieving feeling too. So I said, I know what you feel like. There's a relieving feeling. And then I pulled out the feeling of you have space, because she made a little pen so they could go to the bathroom. And I told them it's okay, just go out to the bathroom. And so then I just heard them walk out, and they all stopped whining, and then they went back to bed. And it was just like that. And it happened twice, because they did it again that night, and I did it a second time. But then on the third time, it didn't quite work because they wanted food, and I wasn't talking food, and I almost gave up. I was just like, ugh. And then my sister came out and gave them food, and then they shut up. So it doesn't have to be all heart, at least in that sense, all metaphysical. We do want physical remedies. So some people do like hearing it from other people's mouths, but align ourselves with what we're saying, align ourselves with what we're feeling, and it's much more powerful, even in verbal communication with people. When I start talking from my heart, it's so much different, because people can smell that dissonance between my heart and my brain. So if I'm trying to argue with someone and express an opinion that I only feel up here and I don't really feel it in my heart, then they come right back at it. They know, because they're doing the same thing. But whenever I'm coming from my heart and it's piercing, you know, and they don't even know what to do. So, but then there's also, I'm not trying to do it to like beat people down, you know, I'm trying to do it to show them this is what I genuinely feel. And they don't feel beaten down, but they also at the same time don't quite know what to do with it. And maybe it's because a lot of us don't really say what we feel in the moment. You know, maybe 30% of the day we actually get to express our true feelings. Rather than 70, we hide it. 70% we hide it. So that's all. The suggestion that I have is just try to align ourselves more from our hearts, you know, and our brains, and we'll start connecting those feelings with our words. And so as we want to speak something, we can just make that association, look at the logbook, see which feelings felt like what, and then start talking that way, and start exercising our hearts, which is the title of my second book. So that's why I like to name it that, because our hearts can do some pretty awesome stuff when it comes to communication. So hopefully you can take something away from that and try something new out. It may take a little bit, but once you figure it out, especially once you open your heart more to that, it'll be pretty simple. So, and it happen a lot faster. You just have to be willing. You have to understand that it's capable, or is possible. So that's really all I wanted to share with you today. It was a how-to rather than an opinion, which maybe it's the same thing. But so if you enjoyed this, please leave comments and questions. If you have any questions about it, I'm more than happy to answer them. You can subscribe, and thank you. Enjoy the rest of your day.